Welcome to the Low-Code Campfire, episode number 59. This is our Friday morning gathering in the Eastern time, in the Central Time Zone anyway, where we get together and talk about issues related to low code. My name is Dale Warner. I'm head of support for Plantin App. And let's see, like I said, this is a gathering that was all skill levels welcome. We get together and talk about techniques, challenges, experiences. I know there's at least one or two good ones, experiences coming your way today. We record all these episodes, and so we've got lots and lots of past editions. They're out on youtube.com/plantinap, and I encourage you to sign up to subscribe to those and get the alarm bell, and so you can see everything that we publish. We run a pretty informal agenda. We say hello, and then we'll do things like first call and look for contributions to our community website. Sometimes we take a look at feature requests. Sometimes there are submitted topics. Sometimes we talk about ghost stories, things that are, well, stick around and I'll explain that. And then after an hour or so, or whenever the conversation winds down, we go to our afterglow segment. So we talk about, we turn the recording off and just have a freewheeling conversation after that. So engage. This is a meeting. Jump in, show and tell, type on chat, raise your hand. We have very few guidelines. The main one is to be nice, and if you've got noise going on, to mute yourself. You can submit questions and topics in advance. That link is on your invitation, plus this link here if you want to grab it on your QR code. With that, we'll say hello, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Can you hear me this week?
Hey, Jim, absolutely. We can hear you.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you could hear me.
Absolutely.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The question is, can we see you?
So, I don't know that we have anyone new to the group. If you haven't said hello, please do. But we will go right to first call, what's on your mind?
I have a first call question, searching for some documentation on TreeView, on what the order of the fields need to be to populate the TreeView control.
So I'm just going to tell you I haven't done much with TreeView, if anything, but I'm going to take a look out on our site here and see if I can find a link that might be of help.
I think it was Patrick a while ago that told me to go look at the SQL console, and I did that. I built a query, but I don't know what order the fields were going to need to be in, and I can't run that query separately from it's in the SQL console. Look at what's coming back.
Yeah, I'm not finding much documentation on it. Anybody else have experience with TreeView? Okay. Well, Jim, you struck out. I will take it as a after this call kind of thing to dig in and find some more information about TreeView.
Seems to be the way my week is going.
I mentioned ghost stories. Jim is one of my ghost stories from this week, so hopefully he'll be able to tell you a little bit about that. What else?
Dale, Jerry here. I have a reminder. I was reminded myself from our good friend Don Gingold, if I'm saying that last name right. We have not found a solution yet to get the Google Maps interface to work with Planta app. I don't know what version it failed on, but I'm going to guess somewhere around 1.20 and above.
Yep.
Probably the Bootstrap 5 is likely. It's running fine on my PAA 1.1617s, just fine with real clients. But he's pretty heavy in that and leaning on me for some consulting, and I just don't understand why the maps aren't appearing. So I'll just put that back in our reminder. If there's anybody could check on that for us, that would be great. We had brought that up at a campfire, probably.
No, absolutely. I'm
And
thinking
you're referring to the actual action?
no, it's not the actual actions. Our Google Map action, as far as I know, works. It's the Jerry demonstrated and put together a great demonstration of using maps, pulling data from the database and putting it out. And it's something that we broke along the way, and I'm stalling a little bit looking for. I think it's on our board already to resolve, but let's see. Yep. So Linda, for your reference, 3442.
Okay.
And we we have this high up on the list to deal with, but haven't been able to put any resource with it just yet. So we haven't forgotten about it. It's on the list to do. This is a front-end development type of thing, and one of our front-end developers lost a couple of weeks due to COVID. That's not an excuse, that's just the reality. So we're helping him catch up. Linda, can you put this on for the product team to talk about today? I'll fill in
I
some
was
details.
just doing that now.
Thank you. Okay, no satisfactory answers yet for first call. What else is going on?
Okay, well, it looks like, Dale, that there's nobody jumping in with any really high fires burning. So I would like to open up a discussion on just some things that I'm seeing that I just wanted to share and see if our core group is having similar experiences. And I'll start in by saying what I'm attempting to do is learn PAA as deeply as I can, and while I'm teaching this to my son as well, I'm seeing things that still either I'm just not good at it yet, I'm misunderstanding it, or the code has not evolved where it needs to be just yet. And this is what I'm referring to. It's around building entities. And when, as a database person, when you start trying to think of your project, you start trying to lay out your tables and what you might need and how they're going to interact with one another. So a very common experience for me, Dale, is to create an entity, and one of the fields in the entity might be referencing another entity for a drop-down purpose. For an example, you might have a record that has categories, and the categories is an entity of itself. So you quite simply create that field type as a type entity, and you name it, and seems to work well.
Right.
Where I get in trouble is trying to make changes. If I go back and modify the entity, or if I touch it, sometimes if I touch it the wrong way, it'll just break. And when it breaks, I've just not found a good way to come back to it without deleting everything and starting again. And when I delete an entity, the actions that were created for that entity, such as maybe an insert into or an update on, or just some of the actions that were created because of the existence of that entity, they don't get purged from the system. So now these entities are gone. But if I go back into my action list on some other project, some other circumstance, I still see these entities make referencing, not entities, actions referencing entities that don't exist anymore. It's as if we're not cleaning up behind ourselves well enough. So I know that was a mouthful, not really looking for straight answers on any direct questions, but I'm practicing and developing in version 1.21. So I feel like I'm the latest and greatest, but I don't know if other people are experiencing those kind of challenges. And so if I were to have a technical programming question that would come out to the team, it would be, if you're going to have two entities, one entity referencing another entity for drop downs, et cetera, what comes first, chicken or the egg? Do you create the entity that's going to live in the drop down window for this other entity first, or can you come at it in either direction? Meaning, could I have one entity and go, oh, you know what? I'd like to put a drop down on this form that has categories. Can I go back and create another entity and then add it back to that original form? Because I am really struggling to get that to work for me. And that's what spawned, okay, I'm going to delete everything, start again. And I found that a lot of the actions are, some of the actions are being left over. So that's my Friday morning thoughts. Nothing serious, nothing mission critical, but thought we'd open some dialogue on that.
Well, I always have input, but I'd be, I don't want to, if anybody has any input before I get started.
The super way to test that would be like, we create an entity and maybe it's got a couple of columns in it, none of which are referencing another entity. And then we miraculously decide, hey, let's go create another entity that has something to populate the drop down in. And then we go back and add that in. That's where I start getting in trouble.
And my response is that I do this all the time and don't have an issue with it. So now it just kind of confuses me and I'm wondering what you're getting into. But let's do one that'll illustrate for all our folks here. So I'm going to create a entity that's called Campfire Client.
Perfect.
And we'll save that and then
let's actually add a record to that entity, just to mimic what I did.
So we have Campfire Clients. We go and add a couple of names, and then we'll come back and let's say we'll add a status, active, inactive. So we've got that far. We do a new, let's do Campfire, and we'll call these okay. We'll put this underneath Campfire Clients. This is going to be a status name, and we'll put a rank in here just to add a little complexity. That will be an integer, and status name is going to be our deal, and we'll make this be sortable as well. And so now we have our two things here. You want to add values first?
Yeah, let's go ahead and add some values. That would make sense. And
so now our puzzle is that we want to start assigning statuses to clients.
That's right. So now we need to modify the client entity and
So we go to our entities and pick Campfire status as the entity we want to add. So here's a question. By any chance, I mean, we have some records. If we start hitting required for this, we're probably going to run into some SQL behind the scenes stuff. I don't know how graceful. Maybe we should test it, but I'm not going to make it required to start with because I know from my database experience that that's going to cause trouble. But is that all you want to do?
and you're saying that that might be trouble because we already have the 2 records in the system that don't have status
that don't have the value. Yeah. So I think that would cause some trouble. Let's redo this in a minute and, you know, let's see it succeed and then go from there. So if we now go to our people and we now have a status, we can edit and say that Dale is active.
Okay, now that's better than what I saw. Originally, it didn't even put it on the form. It wouldn't even put it on the form.
And it sounds like, yeah. So let's redo this same thing. Let's see what's going to happen. I've got it backed up, so who cares? So we will go to Campfire Client, and I'm going to first reverse what we did. So just go to our properties and remove the status.
Good.
And make sure it's happy.
This is
just
nice.
confirm.
Nice and predictable. Mm-hmm.
So let's see what the experience is if we do it wrong. Nope, wrong one. I'm going to fully name it something different just to, you know, illustrate. So we're going to make this required and sortable.
Make it an entity.
Oh, yep. Thank you. Here we go. Here we go. So we had. Are you seeing this error? I mean,
yes. I'm not sure it was exactly that, but I definitely threw some red ink up at one time and started to send me down a rabbit hole. But one of the first times I did it, Dale, is an interesting symptom was I didn't see the error messages, but it did not put the status drop down on the form automatically.
Yep.
It didn't appear. It's just as if I just rejected it and said, seems like a bad idea.
So we don't have status on there, and I'm going to refresh and get into this again. And see what it left behind. So properties didn't do it, and which is kind of
okay.
I mean, this is it looks to be recoverable, meaning it did it as we would hope. I mean, I'd love to see less red ink, right? A better explanation of what went wrong, but we'll just add the property in and override and see if it whines at us. Because I believe what's happening is that SQL is part of a commit rollback transaction. Mm-hmm. So it looked like it in this case it rolled it back correctly. So
you know, not to interrupt, but on one side note, did you make any customization on like the form or anything? The reason I ask is when the override runs, when a change is made, if there's customization made to the form, it does not necessarily change everything as far as like the drop down that filling showing on the form.
Understood, and that's a great question. And your short answer is no, I did not, because what
Okay.
I'm really attempting to do is use PAA out of the box
Okay.
stock for someone who really doesn't have a clue on how to program. They're just trying to set up these databases properly. So I'm really trying to dumb it down to a point of where it's almost virtually no code, Dale. And so,
Sure.
so I think, Dale, what would be interesting is, could we assign statuses to Dale and Jerry and then go back to and make our entity required? So, so then, and see if it passes the test and everything comes back live. In which case, guys like us would know, hey, if you're adding this after the fact, you might want to go pre-populate that column before you start trying to do anything with it.
Yeah, I fully expect it will be fine with us setting it to be required once the data is appropriate. But is to go back to your, yeah, so it was happy and we still have this. And now if we were to add somebody new, it's going to be required. It won't let us add it without.
Perfect.
So going back to the original description of things, you mentioned that actions get created that don't get cleaned up. And
If you were to delete, if you were to just go in and delete your two entities now, the ones that we just created, hadn't this to say you had another form or somewhere and you went to add an action, those actions for those particular entities that you just deleted, in my experience, will still be there.
Sure. So if we take a list, I mean, just to prove their existence before we go on, if we were to, I'm on the listing. Okay, we could just do it on a button. If we were to look at a button,
You sure can. Just add a button.
Add an action, and within the plant an app, I'm looking in the wrong place apparently.
Entities, maybe.
Thank you. Entities. So we have all of our add new, create new.
Yeah, I see create new Campfire client, create new Campfire status. So they do exist.
They do. They do exist. So we're not going to save any of that. We're going to go to Campfire status. Well, this will be a good test. So we've got Campfire status. It's referenced from Campfire client. So if we delete it, you can't, it says, please remove the references before deleting the entity, which is a good error, right?
Yep, I'll buy that.
So we remove, and just for amusement value, we can look at the dependency view and it shows us that it's related to, it's the status in Campfire clients. And so we can go to that one, Campfire client, properties, remove the status. Y'all are being very polite, seeing me click this every time to get back to the Campfire namespace and not commenting on it.
I have it written right here.
Okay.
This is something that I've been battling with, and I was going to say, now that you're actually dealing with it, I wanted to bring it up and see if anyone else was irritated over the fact that once you come back from an entity, if you have a filtered namespace, it doesn't leave you back where you started, and you have to filter again.
I concur 100%, babe.
I want that filter to stay there.
Sounds like something that should be in a cookie or something, right?
Yeah, we have it persist in other places, but we do not here for some reason.
You know, Linda, from a product team perspective, I'm wondering if there's anything that would prevent this from being a low code form, and then we could do things like that pretty easily. But anyway, so we're going to delete out Campfire status. And now here's our Campfire status. This page is going to actually, be gone. So that is expected. Yeah. And it bounced us up a level to the status is gone as expected. If we were to look at, now we go back and recheck and see if our actions are cleaned up or not. So we'll add a button. We'll add an action. We look at entities, create new Campfire client, no status. So when it does what it's supposed to do, it cleans up after itself. So I think we would love to know what sequence lands you in trouble, right? We haven't.
Yeah, I will do some more research on that. We can free up the rest of our time to do more important stuff. But I think I got my circumstance in such a chaos. I can't honestly go back and repeat exactly what I did, but I was really butchering it. I had it tore up in so many different ways, and but I was trying to achieve exactly what you did. And so what I take away from this is if you're going to link to another entity, don't make it required if records already exist until you've gotten your data cleaned up.
Right. Although, we saw it as an ugly error. It worked. It didn't create any havoc for us. But yes, from a data perspective, you can't make something required that's not, that doesn't have data. And you understand, why.
Sure. Oh yeah, I get it. I perfectly understand.
All
right.
But
that's
again,
encouraging to see. I'm very encouraged to see it clean up behind itself. That was alarming to me. That's good.
And I will tell you that I've seen something similar to what you're talking about, that somehow some errors will, and I haven't captured it, but where there's an attribute that shows up in the a property on an entity is there, and yet it's not in the database. There is a sequence of events that can go wrong where our metadata that understands the definition of what the database table is supposed to be gets out of sync. I've seen it happen. I don't know what causes it. And then that's pretty ugly because it thinks it's there, but it's not there. You know what I'm saying? And then you start seeing oddness, and I can fully imagine that the thing when that would cause things to terminate abnormally, and then perhaps you don't get the cleanup after yourself. And that cleanup exists as I'm almost certain, correct me if I'm wrong, Linda, that it's files that are out on the file system that describe the actions, right? So when you create something when you create an entity, it automatically creates all the actions to do the things, and those are JSON files that sit out on the file system. If something blows up and it doesn't clean up those files, it looks like they're there. I mean, the actions will be there, but they won't be connected to anything. So I can imagine it gets into a bad state. It's just help us trap it. If you're able to do a sequence of events, we would love to know what it is.
Sure.
We're on the lookout for it.
Yeah, thank you.
Great question. Anyone else with comments or experiences around that area?
If we could just follow through with Ben and I's request on that namespace, that would be that would be amazing for me. Okay. For me
And I-
personally.
I'll add it to the list of feature
Yeah.
requests.
Let's, do that. And then
I just didn't know if anyone else was encountering that and thinking it was a thorn in their side like I do.
as soon as you have it in there, let me know and we'll switch over to looking at feature requests and we can do some upvoting. And I know that I'm pretty sure there was a feature request here recently that was talking about extending namespaces elsewhere in the product, which is certainly on our roadmap. But yep. Good. What else? I have one. I'm gonna skip around here. Let's see. There was. Just make sure there's nothing that was on the agenda that we needed to look at. Oh, I was going to. So Zoom. Anybody saw Zoom integration? Thought that are you finding any of that valuable, or just filing it away for later? And part of the feedback I'd like to is there's many of these, when we start integrating with other things, essentially there's always a security layer. We spend a chunk of time navigating, okay, here's the documentation from, insert product name here, and here's what you have to do to get around it or to fulfill it. And I hope I'm adding value by actually walking through that. But if I'd love feedback for whether that's okay. You're responsible for figuring out security. What can I do with this thing? Any feedback?
Dale, I can speak volumes on this topic. Anything you can do at any time to teach any of our users how to get through security, that is invaluable. I mean, it's priceless to us, because one of the issues I've always had with writing API endpoints or connecting to others, in particular, I think of I'd thrown a challenge out to all of us some time ago to interface with Google Analytics, and oh my gosh, to get that bearer token, it was just horrible experience trying to figure out how to get the bearer token from Google Analytics. Okay. And we had found that our programmers over at Plant App had already taken care of that little nuance inside the what was I doing back then? The push notifications is where I was trying to do that. And but interfacing with everything from you doing Zoom or AuthNet or sky's the limit as to what you can interface with. It seems like everybody has their own way of clearing security. It's not quite as standard as I'd love for it to be, but I think that's invaluable. I mean, even Google Maps, there's some due diligence one has to do before you're going to get Google Maps to play nice with you. And if you don't know, I'll be honest with you, the Google documentation is less than desirable unless you are a Google engineer, and then it makes perfect sense. Once you understand how they're thinking, it's not so bad, right? But the learning curve of figuring out what they're thinking, and OAuth and OAuth 2 and all that stuff. No, I would just rather you show me how to do it instead of me trying to reinvent the wheel and learn it. And then I could move on and use PAA for what it's really designed to do.
Well, thanks for that. There's no question for me that you just have to take the time and understand the particular one, just exactly what you said, that there's variations. It's the ideas, the concepts carry, but each one has their own idea of, well, what you have to pass and what it needs to look like. And at the end, it's pretty simple. You do this, and you get through. Yep. But there's always several hours involved in making that happen. So
at least, yes. So no, I appreciate you going that extra step. I wish everybody did, and wish Google and everybody else in the world made a YouTube video of how to do it, but they don't.
Yeah, but you get into that, and there's so many there's so many different languages. I think they often assume, okay, you're going to approach it using such and such a library. Just use this library. It's great. Well, if we're not using that library, if we're trying to do it through a server request type item, it's a little more nuanced. Okay, well, thanks for that feedback. So the plan for the week to come, now that we've gotten through security and done a little bit, we're going to go on to do some more things with Zoom. Have ideas of doing interactive, actually creating some things or signing people up for things or seeing who didn't attend, things like that. So we'll be doing more. And in fact, there is a security hurdle that I have to accomplish between now and then, because Zoom is letting me read things and not write things. And I'm set up as an admin on my rights level. So I got to figure out still why. So it's always a puzzle. There's an answer, but I got to figure it out. Cool. Anything more on Zoom? What else do I have? I didn't know if there's, I'll click here and see if there's anything on contributions. Haven't looked yet. Today, nothing new. Take a look and see if there's anything on feature requests. Ben's giving us the thumbs up. All right, so there's this thing here, retain the namespace filter an entity on page on return. I am going to do a thumbs up on that. And anybody who's interested in this particular feature, that's on the chat, and or any other feature within our site. We pay attention to these as we're doing new releases, doing our planning. Yep, I saw that it was Jim that posted about namespace to automation API and pages. I'm not sure that we had thought about namespaces.
I have a question on that. I wanted to post in there and question Jim Anthony, but he's on the call, so maybe he can explain namespaces on pages. I can understand APIs, but I don't understand the request for namespaces on pages.
So I have a group of pages that's related to a business function. You know, when you got a lot of pages on your site, it would be nice to just be able to filter to get down to those pages that relate to a particular business function. That was my thinking.
And you're using the pages function here to manage that?
I am using right now. I've been using naming pages so I could search for them easily and things like that. But seemed like everywhere else we were putting the namespace, so I thought, oh, well, and to me, the namespace just looks like an attribute of an entry.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking, okay, if we could just add a namespace so all my pages that relate to accounts payable I could bring them up and look, find them quickly.
Yeah, even if they were not related to oftentimes things get related by the menu structure, and you're
right.
saying this might traverse across a menu structure to still want to categorize them. So that's right. A great idea. We'll put that into the product team hat and shake it up. And
I just realized that when you enter a feature request, you don't automatically vote for it. So I need to go vote for my feature.
Vote for yourself. Huh? Okay.
Right.
Well, the retained namespace is up to 6 already, so.
Wait, what was that? The retained namespace what?
You're up to 6 votes already.
Woohoo!
Mm-hmm. All right. Next, ghost stories. I know there was a couple of these this week. Jim, are you interested in sharing?
I have two this week that have swallowed a bunch of time, and one of which is I was building a new form with a SQL drop-down list, and in that form, I referenced a token that's in the init, and the drop-down list populated fine, so everything looked fine. But when that form, when you would have that token in the SQL query of the drop-down list, it would cause the actions of the buttons on the form not to work.
So that it existed in order to build the form because it was created on init, but then
right.
in the life cycle of the form, it doesn't exist anymore by the time you're getting around to pushing buttons.
Right, and the form's populated, the controls populated, you have a value on the form. I had no, this was on a very complex form that I ended up having to strip apart and take apart to find out, okay, because that would have been one of my last, was one of my last places to look, is why once the form is there and populated, why something was going to look at the SQL query on a drop-down list that had no relationship of the.
So you were just trying to consume the value. You weren't trying to do anything with the value of the drop-down. Or
Yeah.
were you trying to do
yeah,
something?
I was just referencing the drop-down.
Yeah, interesting.
I've seen
so I put
issues. I'm sorry. I've seen issues like that when there's conditional statements, but I don't think I've ever seen it with the actual data. You're talking the SQL statement itself in the dropdown?
SQL statement in the self with the drop-down. And the workaround I came up with was to take the token that I was referencing that was in the on init event, put that to a control and reference that control in the SQL statement, then it would work.
Yeah, I've done similar things, not specifically in SQL, but I've done it in conditional statements because of that particular situation. If I do something on the pre-init, it doesn't exist when you hit the submit button, so then conditional statements would fail. So what I've done is, like you said, create a hidden field, dump the value into the hidden field, reference the hidden field in conditional statements because that is persistent.
And this was where the SQL, at least my thought was, oh, the SQL statement, once it's populated, it's never going to look at that again, so it didn't matter. But that turns out something in the back end when you click on a button makes it fail. And then I put together a couple scenarios that I send into support with here's how it fails, here's how to make it work. And then the High came up with an alternate, which was if I took and put single quotes around that token in the SQL statement, even though it's a numeric value, it would resolve properly, and it didn't demonstrate the problem anymore. So.
Oh, so this is the one that you got a response back from me, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, well, good. I'm going to go research that ticket just to understand what happened, and maybe it's worth more conversation.
Just out of curiosity, is this drop down linked to another drop down?
No, and I rewrote the sample I wrote in my ticket. I went and really simplified it to use off the roles table, just so it could be duplicated in any place. I could probably bring it up and share my screen, I guess. People want to look at it. That takes a challenge for me. I still have it. All right. Can I share a screen, Dale?
Sure.
There it is. Okay, so in this form with that token in there, this form will fail, and what happens is the drop down's there and getting pieces, but the action button will just sit here and do nothing.
Out of curiosity,
Yeah.
if you put a default value for that, like
I
equals
did not
0,
try that.
it's like it's valid I'm wondering if it's just a case of it's reevaluating the SQL, not actually running it.
Right.
So just in the drop down, put equals 0 to the right of supplier ID.
Oh, in here,
Yeah. Yep.
like that. Yes.
So it reevaluates the SQL, even though it's probably not doing anything with it, or I don't know. I don't know what it's doing with it. It doesn't apparently need it. So
Right.
and then it's blank, so you have a value of X equals blank, and it doesn't like the SQL and it blows up.
Right. And I keep forgetting about that syntax where you put the default in the equal in the token name. I did not try that one. Yeah, because my workaround was over here where this is where I just put an extra control on the form.
And so the value got retained, and it's then available
Right.
when that evaluation happens. Yep. And so you say you spent a bunch of time on it.
Yeah, because this was part of a form that had a bunch of controls, and it's like, why is stripping it down to getting the finding that problem took a while.
No, and I understand. I'm just conversationally saying I've experienced it. I know Ben has, and I suspect we all have, where you get to the end and you say, oh yeah, that makes sense, but you're and in so many areas low code saves us a ton of time, but then chasing down these things that aren't immediately evident, and you just end up spending, whether it's an hour or more. It's just the one that I helped one of our regulars here that doesn't happen to be here today. Yesterday I was helping with a question where a set session token wasn't working, and it turns out that the value that he was trying to set into the session had some parentheses in the value, and it was just enough to confuse the set session syntax, so it just wasn't evaluating. And another set of eyes is and realizing A, that the parentheses were the problem, and B, you didn't need them anyway because it was a SQL statement that really didn't need order of precedence. Removing the parentheses, and all of a sudden it magically begins to work. So yeah, we've all had that experience, and I don't know. I'm kind of coming to the conclusion that it's just part of the cost of doing business in low code.
That's why I appreciate this group so much.
Absolutely. All right, where were we? Oh, did you have another one, Jim?
Well, the other ticket that you said they were able to replicate last night, which was with Bootstrap 5 on a site that's installed as an application on a server.
Yep, the virtual directory issue. Once we keyed in on that, if you're using virtual, we do a whole lot of testing in a standard scenario, and the product works great. And then you get outside into edge cases, and in this case, it was virtual directories. The thing. There's a bug in there that needs to be fixed, and it's fixable, and we will do it. But it's just, I'm just sorry that it didn't get caught in our QA process. Cool.
It's just like you said, part of the cost of doing business.
Great. We've got a couple more minutes. If there's anybody with a topic that you've been holding back on. Good. I'm gonna take that as nothing burning. Let me do my wrap up then. Next, we're going to get together again and do this again next Friday. So that's July 22. I've heard from Matt Putnam and our sales team. He wants to stop by and say a few words. I suspect he'll be there. There's the possibility he's might ask for a volunteer. So you can either put yourself on mute or be conspicuously absent. No, Matt is trying to put together some great some testimonials. So if you'd be willing to chat with him about that, not next week, but just set up time for it, I'm sure he would appreciate it, and we would appreciate it. We're obviously trying to grow the company. So that'll be an opportunity, and so he'll say more about that. And with that, I am going to say happy low coding. Thank you guys for showing up, and it's always great that we get together and solve a few problems and kind of help understand what's going right and what could use improvement in the product. So we appreciate you. We will see you next time, and hang around for Afterglow if you have a few minutes.